When I do step into a class as a yogi, like as a student and not a teacher, it just looks like another version of the London Tube, where their mat is their personal space. And when someone else steps on your mat, it's almost like why are you here? And why, And, when we talk about yoga as connection and integration, it's not just connecting within to yourself, but then bringing that out towards others. That's, I feel, the only way you can then enhance the quality of your life.
That's David Cam, and this, my friends, is the Yoga Life Podcast. So earlier this week, we celebrated Earth Day, and I've been thinking to myself, why do I do this podcast? What is the point in living? Like, why I don't earn a lot of money doing this. I feel like I'm trying to make my intro short, but I want to live for more than myself, to actually make a little bit of difference in the world, and just everything I've seen on Earth Day has really brought it home to me, in the David Attenborough documentary Our Planet, about the impact that we're having. And I've already explored the notion of moving to an eco-village down in the countryside, growing my own vegetables. And at the moment, that's not a possibility. So for financial reasons, but I can't afford it. So what can I do right now that's sustainable for me to make a bit of a difference? And therefore, I am pleased, delighted, excited to announce a new sponsor, Small Changes. They are a local organic whole foods and eco-friendly store just down the road from me, in Dublin City, in Drumcondra, but they are expanding. That's all I can say for now, and there's more exciting news to happen this summer. So what do? Well, they offer local organic produce, season willing, and sustainable eco-friendly, where possible, unpackaged options and refills, taking care of the ethical sourcing and affordability so that you can make the changes that matter most for you. So if you're looking to help, to do your bit, to reduce your waste, support local, I recommend going down. There's no promo codes, no discount. I don't earn a commission from this. To go down to their store in the ABC, Lower Drumcondra Road, number 40. That's in Dublin 9. And check them out. Go onto their website, smallchanges.ie. You can go down, bring your cup with you, and you get 50% off a fresh juice or a smoothie. Have a little browse around and maybe pick up some stuff. Feel free to tell them Kevin sent you. That would be much appreciated. Okay, next sponsor are om.com, Om Apparel. Speaking of sustainability and reducing your waste, why not get yourself some nice clobber that you can wear on your mat or off your mat? So, for example, I have the June Voyagers, and I can wear them teaching, but I can also wear them going out with the missus, going for dinner, and they look the part and they last. I've actually just made a big pile in my room now of all the clothes I need to throw away. Stuff, cheap clothing, it doesn't work. You know yourself, it doesn't wash well. It's a money down the drain, and you're damaging the environment. So while you're on this earth, go to om.com /hashtag TYLP. So that's ohmme.com /hashtag TYLP, as in the Yoga Life Podcast. Pick out your active wear, all eco-friendly, made from recycled fabrics, even their packaging. So I got my packages through the other day, and they are all made from recycled paper. So go onto their website, om.com /hashtag TYLP. Pick out your garms, whether they're on or off the mat. Put in their promo code Kevin to get 15% off. And they got their new spring wear collection in, so you'll be ready. And a lot of that stuff is good for the summer too. Last but most definitely not least, another local brand, 108 Asana Yoga Sequencing Cards by Yogaroo. And when I say brand, I mean person, because that's Ruth Delahunty. She has produced these beautiful cards that you can use for building your own home practice, improving your sequencing and doing it simply but effectively. Another thing about this type of product is that it makes a great gift. So if you feel like maybe you have your cards already and you've got a birthday coming up, you want to get someone something for their, maybe they've just finished their 200 hour, their 300 hour, and you want to get them a nice little gift. These look absolutely beautiful, easy to post, easy to package, and every time they practice, they'll think of you. Yeah. So in order to avail of their promotion, you go to yogaroo.ie. That's yoga, RU.ie. Use the promo code Kevin for 10% off. So that's Kevin, Kevin. I can't even spell my name. For special discount, 10% on yogaroo.ie. So that's the lovely sponsors. And now I have my bit of housekeeping. Retreat sold out. Boom. Next, God, I sound like an arse, don't I? And the workshop, 25th, handstand, heels overhead. My very clever name. Please don't steal it. Anyone who hears about it, otherwise I won't be a friend ever again. That workshop is half full or half empty. Depends how you look at these things. But so there's some spaces left, and you don't need to handstand to come. If you can handstand, you don't need to come. But if you can't, come along. May 25th, why not, on a Saturday down in Castle Knock Yoga Hub. You can check out all those details on my website, Kevin Boy Yoga, retreats and events, and fill out the form and I'll send you the little booking link so you can get yourself sorted. So that's it, that's my housekeeping, that's my sponsors. Now, last thing to do is tell you about the guest, the person you've been waiting to hear from, not listen to me going on. So David Cam, or David... or Dave, as I call him, because I like to abbreviate people's names, even if I don't have permission. Stayed with me for 2 nights, and what an absolute joy of a man. Just the most smiley, intelligent, easygoing, positive person you could hope to meet. My missus absolutely loved him as well. So, yeah, it was great, man. With this workshop that I went to, you'll hear me talk about it to Dave. I was real apprehensive because I'm kind of a bit awkward. I'm an English guy and haven't done much dancing apart from when I was drunk when I was younger. And I thought, I need to challenge myself. I need to put myself out of my comfort zone, get a little bit silly, be able to bring out of the inner child that I've maybe lost, and that play that we all lose as adults. So hearing more about Dave and his experience is there's more than meets the eye with David. He's the guy is a qualified architect, but he left that to do what he's doing now, and how he draws comparisons between the two fields is really fascinating. He's got a great story and he's an absolute pleasure to talk to, so I really hope you enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's the main man, David Cam. Hey David.
Hello.
My voice is really croaky. It's normally not this croaky. How are you?
I'm good.
How you feeling?
Good, yeah, quite relaxed actually after this weekend.
Yeah, I'll give some context to the people listening. So we spent the whole weekend at your workshops, and it's been pretty physical and a lot, but it's been great because what I've noticed is, what a massive realization that I had is that you get good at the things you practice, and if I'm so used to practicing in basically straight lines, and having some sort of guide as to how to move, but with your workshops, there was a big element of creativity. So move in a way that you're not used to, and that requires imagination. Now, I have moved in unpredictable ways before when I've done team sports or jiu-jitsu, martial arts, but in that circumstance, you're reacting to somebody else, and therefore you are being creative, but you've got a stimulus. You're trying to counter what someone else is doing. But when it's just you and you've got to use your imagination, I found it really difficult. I really it was I made me realize that how adult I've become.
Yeah,
I've grown up, but I've kind of forgotten how to maybe improvise. And is that something you've heard before? People saying about you?
Yeah, for sure. I think most of these students who uh, really respond to my sharings always kind of come back to me with a slightly nostalgic tone of, it would be almost like, oh, thank you for bringing back that child in me, or like, thank you for just not being so serious.
Yeah.
And that's it really, I think, because this is always sort of inherently within all of us, and we just sort of forgot.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, in these sports context, you have these stimulus, and I'm hoping to be the stimulus, in my class at least. That's what I see it as, to just sort of ease people into this place of play and imagination. And I think it's very hard, which is why it's still something that you need to be coaxing people into. And the thing is also how, what was it? You were talking about how it's really tricky to get there in the beginning, because it's quite a big ask of reflecting upon yourself, which I think is a space that you don't necessarily find in sports, because like you said, it's so embedded in almost reflex, if you think about it.
Exactly.
You can't really think, you just got to act.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then what is so interesting to when we then put this in the context of a yoga class is then you've got to consider, you almost have the gift of time to then be like, okay, what do I actually want to do? It's no longer a response to someone else, but more an acknowledgement of your desire. And as adults, we get scared when we get confronted with this, because we don't actually know what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
also for me, it was compounded for the fact that I a kind of slightly awkward English white guy. Just like, I'm just not very. I don't really dance unless I'd be drunk, maybe, and I don't drink alcohol anymore. So I noticed a few people in the class, like one of the girls, she's a dancer, and she was very comfortable moving in a way that was, I'm like, in a quite, I suppose, an effeminate way. Like, I'm not that in touch with my feminine side, and I would like to be more so. And I think that it's funny how if you like go to Russia, for example, a Russian ballet dancer, male ballet dancer, is almost treated like a Premiership footballer in England would be. They're
Yes.
considered to be great, not sportsmen, but great athletes. But when we were in school, dancing wasn't something that was encouraged. It wasn't even an option. It was like, even in secondary school, drama, dancing, singing wasn't something that was encouraged for the lads, really, which is such a shame, because I really think that creativity, I think, well, not just for your mental health, but also from a more practical point of view, automation is coming. I've worked in artificial intelligence. It's coming. If you have a job that's transactional, that could be easily replicated, it's only a matter of time before you get replaced. But creativity is something that will always serve you in any field. Have you thought? Because I know I mean, myself and David have basically been together the whole weekend, so we've talked a lot. And one thing you said that was quite interesting was, it's not necessarily the mode at which you're communicating. For example, now it's yoga, but it's the mode is secondary almost, isn't it? The vehicle is secondary. Could you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. So just for more context as well, my background, I'm from Malaysia, firstly. And if you guys don't know much about Malaysia, it's a very, very multicultural country, and lots of different races and religions, and even when we speak on a daily basis, it's a mishmash of languages. At some point when I might speak to my friend in English, and if I can't find the right word, I would swap on over to a Chinese dialect, and then to a Malay little term, and so I guess that's how my brain has always been wired a way where, it really doesn't matter what it is and how it is that you like to communicate, as long as you find a way,
Yeah.
basically. And from that, that's how, and knowing that I'm naturally quite an artistic person, and that's where my curiosity lies in. I never had too much of a pressure of what it is that I choose to study. It was a big thing of like, oh, where do I go? But what I know is that I want to go into creativity. So then what I went into is architecture. And from there, I learned so much about space in general before I then went into a slight detour of dance, and then I chose to do a master's in
A
dance.
slight detour? That's a big detour, isn't it?
Honestly, I think that's what many people around
on
me...
on the outside, it seems
Exactly.
like
Yeah, which is such a valid point, it's like a what, like what do you mean by like, being in the drawing room all the time and then prancing about? But there's something about it that, although it felt disconnected, I felt the pull. I felt a massive question mark of, I'm intrigued. So I just followed that gut feeling and went there. And that was when I was like, wow, it really came full circle, because when I was kind of exposed to the theoretical side of dance, specifically this perspective, which is called the chorological perspective, it got me to understand that in the end, I'm still dealing with space. I am still designing space in a much more intimate scale, and this being within the scale of a body than the scale of a building. And what's very fascinating is that now I'm dealing with the factor of time a lot more sensitively, say, than buildings, because obviously you create something and you're really hoping that it wouldn't crumple on you. But then the power of movement is that it's transient in nature. It constantly changes, which means my design brain inside me is going, oh my gosh, there's so many stimuli to work based upon. And so that really strengthened this thing inside me of how I'm wired, that these mediums are simply vehicles for me to realize what it is that I would like to express. And at one point it was through illustrations, it was through building designs, and right now my building is the body, and and that's what I see the vehicle as. And especially now that I ventured more into the realm of mindfulness, I'm taking away the aspect of performance in what I understand in movement, and applying it more into what I'm more passionate about, which is well-being. Like, how can this actually help bodies that I see and minds beyond the professional context of dancing? How can I make this accessible?
There's definitely link. Oh, by the way, if you're chilly, feel free to put on your jacket, because it's a bit chilly.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's good.
Just to let you know.
Oh, good.
But so I'm going to generalize a little bit here, maybe stereotype. You're Asian, and you're from you went to architecture school, and we were speaking before. You were saying your parents didn't have the opportunity to go to university. So when you went from studying architecture, going to England, which is, as you said to me before, like it's to go from Asia to England to study at a university is seen as like quite an achievement, How did they feel about you leaving architecture, pursuing dance?
Well, I would have lied if I said that there were no resistance. But this is what I'm so thankful for in my parents, where they always operate from a place of trust, full support. Although you could see that there's a little bit of disagreement in their minds, they would just say, kind of, yeah, if that's what you really feel strongly in doing, go for it, because it's your life in the end. So I'm super grateful for that. But I also gave myself a bit of a rule, not really a rule, but sort of a condition, I guess, because when you graduate from the part 1 of architecture, you have sort of a 2 years allowance to basically do a work placement before you then go back for the master's equivalent, which is your part 2. And so I took out the first year as a gap year just to test the waters and see if dancing is really what I want to do or if it's just a fleeting hobby. And that was when I told my parents, and they were so kind to have funded my gap year, because it's technically a diploma still. So it's still education, not just me spending the whole year going to random dance classes. And then I gave myself this condition that, okay, now that I know I really, really enjoy dancing and I'd love to pursue it professionally, I will try and audition for the master's programs that offer scholarships. And only if I were to get in, I would continue it, because that way my parents do not have to fund something they may not have, as much support in a sense. And that way it also empowers me to realize that actually I can do this, than to kind of push through something that may not be the best idea, especially when you're, just by that graduating age when people are already starting to become so competitive with, the field that they're going into. So yeah, thankfully I got in and started this master's in performance, which was probably one of the most incredible years of my life, because I think that year has opened my eye so much in who I am, firstly, and secondly, in how powerful movement can be. That's actually the same year I started my yoga teacher training, and so it all just came into integration quite seamlessly.
When you talk about, you mentioned something really interesting yesterday about making, well, not actually yesterday, it was a Friday, the first time we met, you said about earthquake proof in the body. What do you mean by that?
So in architecture, I've learned about earthquake architecture, which is basically things that you do from a design perspective to prepare a building to withstand earthquakes. So essentially, from a building point of view, it's sliding elements to your building. And I just started thinking about this in the perspective of the body, because we are moving bodies. We are designed to move, and the only constant we know is change. And we hear this all the time. And if you think about change as instability, essentially earthquake, like how can we allow ourselves to condition our body towards that means? And I have to admit that this is not a term that I thought of on my own for sure. Like, yes, it came from architecture, but I'm not too sure who the first person who sort of considered how we can apply this to the body, but who I've been prompted by in the movement field is these guys called Fighting Monkey. And they are, I think they are like a dance company who are now also offering movement-based sessions. And I have not done any sessions with them yet, but I've heard many comparisons from feedback from students and teachers who attend my classes.
Are they in the UK? Are they in London?
They are not. They're based in Europe. I don't know where exactly.
Oh.
Although this year for my birthday, I've given myself a treat to go visit them
Cool.
for a weekend of immersion. So I am really excited. So hopefully next time I would be able to tell you more. But they are the ones who sort of puts it in the light of, how can we see this in the body's context? And just, I guess from that prompt, it really got me thinking. And so, like I said in the workshops this past weekend, my focus in what I share with my students are less so like, it's founded in mobility, founded in creating space in the body and the mind, but most importantly, I want to cultivate a responsive body, a responsive mind, where, it's not my expectation to see my students following me after 10 years. If it is, it's just a bit of a bonus that they want to come and hang out with me. But that these students, after a reasonably substantial period of time with me, they would then have the confidence to just move on their own based on their own creative agency, or just from that place of curiosity. We know a lot more than we do. The thing that I said about how if you wake up in the morning and you naturally yawn, you naturally find that stretch in your body, you don't have a yoga teacher by your bedside going, do this. You know what pleasure feels to you. In fact, more so than any teachers in the room, because we can only speak from our experience. And what we can share are sort of reflections as if we were mirrors, in a sense. And it's down to the students to then take the responsibility to find out if that is applicable to you or not. So responsiveness, I'd say.
Which makes complete sense, because life is unpredictable. And
Exactly.
you don't know what variables are going to be thrown your way. And you can't always move in the same planes. I wanted to ask you about your yoga practice, because we mentioned, we were just before we hit record, you were talking about singing.
Yeah.
So if someone says to you, like, do you practice yoga, what would be your response?
I will sort of respond the way I've been saying it to the students. So I will share with them what I see yoga as.
Yeah.
And for me, yoga is this idea of shedding light in places that you lack awareness. So how singing came in for me is because from my background, I know my body from training in dance and all of that, and I feel like that's something now, especially with my teacher training and all of the experiences that I've culminated through these past few years. I have my own agency to find out what it is that I need for my body. But in terms of lead classes, what I really lack awareness in is my voice. And it comes from many angles. On a personal level, it's the fear of confrontation. And from a technical level, it's down to, now that I'm busy teaching, how do I sustain my voice? Like when you're talking all the time, and especially when you're teaching big groups, in festival settings, you do have your microphone, but there's only so much it could do. You still will need to project. So is there a way I can sustainably kind of maintain the quality of my voice? And in fact, like for a yoga teacher, in my opinion, to have injuries in your body is less impactful as not being able to speak. Like if you have a flu, or that's when teachers really go, I cannot teach. But you see teachers around where they might still be dealing with sprains or anything, but they could technically still teach because they could really sit on a chair and just operate from their voice. Yeah.
That's actually a kind of a side product, or an unrealized benefit of having a podcast, is that when I listen back and I'm trying to edit, not when I say edit, I don't mean cut stuff out. I mean, when I'm listening to the sound checking it after the recording, I listen to how I speak. And I realize that to me, voice is fascinating. I think that if you're a teacher, you're a professional speaker. Well, more accurately, you're
Absolutely.
a professional communicator. And it's important to be aware of your economy of words, your tone, your pitch, certain words you rely on that aren't useful, even how you speak about yourself. For example, I've noticed with myself, if someone pays me a compliment, I'll downplay it straight away.
Yeah.
I'll say, I'll try to just balance it. But weirdly enough, at the same time, because I notice when I'm talking to people, I hear myself back, I do that a lot. But at the same time, when I'm on my own, and because I spend a lot of time on my own, I think what we all do as freelancers, I say stuff to I almost give myself pep talks in my head, like go on, Kev, you can do it, But it's funny how we don't really think about our voice, and in fact, you've probably heard this before. Often if someone like hears their own voice, they're like, oh, I can't hear my own voice. They're like, oh, do I sound like that? Is that what I really sound like? And it's shocking that people are so they find it hard to be at peace with how they sound.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It really is true. And I think, what you said about economy of words, that's when it becomes very powerful. Like personally, I don't journal, and that's because of my personal sort of, back in childhood, I was drilled to write my alphabets in very specific ways. And so now, if I do keep a diary, it almost is counterproductive because I'm too bogged down by the perfection of my words. And maybe from architecture as well, like my words would have to be perfectly written. Any squiggly line, I'm like, oh, I can't. So there's already this layer of filter before I then share my thoughts. So what initially got me into looking into voice as somewhere that I'm not as aware of as part of my yoga practice, I started verbal diaries where I, whenever I feel there's a heightened emotion in me, I would take out my iPhone and press record. And I would just blab out, with no filter, and I don't even plan what I say. And then I would stop the recording when I feel like I'm done, and it's my choice if I want to listen back to it or not. But even just verbalizing it already helps you like land some thoughts that you have in your head and your mind. And this is where it gets very interesting because, like if we talk about really what yoga is, for me, it's also space for you to process, that space of contemplation, reflection. And as we all know, we are learners by many different means. I'm personally a visual kinesthetic learner. You get, people who, especially these guys who enjoy a podcast are probably auditory learners. And you get so many other kinds of learning in a sense. And, when I share movement, I just suddenly realize that, I'm sort of only tailoring it to one kind of learner. And how can I make my classes abundant, with sources of inspiration for people to bounce back from in their personal pursuit of education in their own bodies and minds. And so power of words, when you learn how impactful your words are and get rid of unnecessary ones, enjoying the power of silence, that's massive, and like you said, all of these inner chatters that we have when we speak to people, what my pattern is if I'm scared, if I'm a little bit jittery, especially in the class setting, I will talk a lot. Like the first 10 minutes maybe it'll be like, hi, my name is David, and it just goes on. And that's just my pattern. And then it would be down to me catching it, like, really, I'm not serving the students because they probably have missed 90% of what I've said, and so then getting that awareness back.
Yeah, and knowing when to allow there to be silence and being comfortable in that silence. But even saying things like, when I did the teacher training with Adam Husler, he's saying how you should say, okay, everybody take a brick. And then later on he'll say, like, maybe if you don't want to use the brick, you can put it to one side. Instead of take a brick if you need a brick at the start, then everyone's like, then they think, if I need a brick, I've already failed. And typically the people that take the brick, like if it was for Hannah Manasana, people that need the brick are the ones that aren't as flexible. And already they feel down on themselves because they're not very flexible. And then you're saying, oh, if you need a brick. But that simple thought process of saying everybody take a brick, and then if you feel like you don't want it, not need it, want it, put it to one side. And I like that. I actually think that type of methodical approach to teaching is what takes someone to another level, and to constantly refine that. Actually, I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned about shedding light on our darkest parts, and you said something today in the workshop which I really liked, and that was, it was in the context of pressing into handstands, and it was that people that wobble, fall over, make mistakes, shake, they're the ones that are willing to be a fool, or fool in inverted commas, or in order to learn. And the ones that, or sometimes we find ourselves not wanting to do that, and that we don't go to those places that we feel uncomfortable, and therefore we just reinforce our ego. I think that is so important, isn't it? That's your kind of, that's your yoga, really. Because I have for example, I teach handstand workshops, and today in your class I was trying things that I haven't tried before. Even though I knew there was maybe people around me that are like, oh, he can't do it, and he's he teaches handstands, but he can't. But was that point I was like, am I going to be a hypocrite and just do what I'm good at, like jump up into handstand, or am I going to try something when I know people around me may be going, oh, he can't actually. Look at Kevin. He's supposed to be able to handstand. But that really is the challenge. And speaking of darkest parts, I'm putting it all together here, David. Martial arts.
Yeah.
We've talked about that you're maybe interested in doing this, but you have maybe a bit of resistance to martial arts. What darkness does it present to you?
I guess because I'm a bit of a nomad and a bit of a loner. Like I'm quite an individualistic person where I think what is rooted in is my fear of letting go of control. Which is why initially I'm very fearful of handstands too. I'm very fearful of going upside down. And I guess that was my stage one in the sense of let's conquer that, but still within my own terms. But what martial arts have become appealing lately is the fact that it is highly based on responsiveness. So I have to let go, and it really doesn't matter how good I am with my body. I have to take into account someone else. And historically, back when I was a kid, I'm never really that good with any sports because of the nature of how it is, like football or basketball whatsoever. When there's a partner that's involved, I lose that. Maybe because I feel like I cannot predict what's going to happen. There's too many permutations of possibilities that are out there, and that freaks me out. Which is more the reason why I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's still really like, I still face the same thing of like being so anxious of going to things, but in the end, I just remind myself that, like, remember when you were a kid and you just don't know anything. Where do we get that confidence? I really don't know, like where? It's just because we just keep seeing possibilities, we weren't said no to yet as much, and so we were just like, okay, why, and you just go from that place.
Do you feel though any fear of getting hurt?
And
it would be rational if you did. By
I
the
think
way.
Yeah. I mean, rationally speaking, yes. I'm sure there's an extent of fear for that, but I don't think it's the biggest driving force of fear in this case. I really think it's the whole if I were to compare fear, let's say, I would probably be even more fearful of looking like a fool than being physically injured.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But I still don't think that would have been the source. It's really just this idea of letting go. And one thing I actually haven't mentioned to you, but like some students who stayed behind was I'm hydrophobic. You see the pattern there?
You're hydrophobic? Yeah. You're scared of water?
Yeah. Like, as in, I can shower and stuff, but like, but when I get into swimming, not my favorite thing. So if I do swim now, which I try my best, I don't do it often at all, just because of time. But if I do, I will still have to give myself about 5 laps of swimming focused on breath work so that I don't go and freak out.
What caused that hydrophobia?
I don't know. I think, again, lack of control, when you feel that your legs are not touching anything. Because if I'm in a, sort of a very shallow pool, I'm fine, but when I cannot touch something. But then again, what is now my impetus is that, look, I cannot handstand, so let's now try it again and see what I can find. Yeah, and that's what I love about yoga, in a sense where it's just put back into a much safer context in terms of physical practice. In a yoga class, you're put back into a very metaphorical way of dealing with your insecurities within that space, and it's many things. There's always a pattern, like you've now heard, from what I say. If you think about it, they're all a pattern of being afraid to lose control. And now I have sort of found it in my hands, because it's, again, the same thing. Maybe upside down, but I am not touching anything with my feet. Yeah, and that's that's why I'm like quite passionate about helping people identify these patterns and resistance that they have on the mat, or and so then they can sort of translate that beyond their mat practice and going, like, where is this coming in other aspects of my life?
Yeah, I think, like I was talking to you earlier about how I'm going to start doing dance classes with my girlfriend, and oh my God, I'm just seeing the video of it today, like they had on their website, and I thought, Jesus Christ, it makes me shudder looking at it. People, just like I'm just, because it makes me feel pretty uncomfortable, and I'm wondering why. I'm actually thinking of going. I've never told anyone this, I don't think, but I'm thinking of going to see a hypnotherapist.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, but I don't. Do you think? Have you ever seen a hypnotherapist?
I haven't, but I love the idea of therapy in general, and I'm actually intrigued by psychotherapy.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason why I think of this is because I was listening to a podcast with Stephen Fry, and he says he can't dance, but he had to do a sketch on TV. This is back in the early 90s or late 80s with Hugh Laurie. Do you know Hugh Laurie, the guy from House? And in the comedy scene, Hugh Laurie says, hit it, bitch. And Stephen Fry starts dancing. And Stephen Fry was like, listen, I can't dance. I have a phobia against it. I mean, Stephen Fry can do everything, but singing, dancing, he's like an awkward English guy. And he went to a hypnotherapist, one session, and this hypnotherapist was said, like, why are you frightened of I don't know why I'm doing his accent. It's like the count from one, two. And he's like, why are you scared of dancing? And he went all back into his childhood, how something happened in his childhood where he was on stage and he had to dance and people laughed, and that was it. But then the hypnotherapist said, put him into a deep, deep trance and said, what is the cue that you're waiting for? And he says, hit it, bitch. So he said, when you hear the words, hit it, bitch, you will dance like you've never danced before. And then when it came to it, Hugh Laurie said on the night, he said, listen, I'm not going to say the bitch thing because it's a bit rude for TV. And he says, no, you have to say it. And he said, hit it, bitch. And he said he just danced. He said he was in a trance, and I'm a bit reluctant about hypnotherapy because I just don't know. I can't understand how it works. But if it would help me get over the fear of dancing while sober, to me it'd be worth it.
Absolutely. Why not?
Who knows what potential I could have?
Nothing to lose, Next world's greatest dancer.
I know. Have you found though, like with teaching dance, that have you seen any transformations with people that have been like, oh, I can't do this at all, and then have these breakthroughs?
Absolutely, but not when teaching dance, and more teaching yoga. Because again, I'm taking away the need to feel like you're performing. So essentially, within, I always say in confession and just basically as a yoga teacher, sometimes I do have that hit of like I feel like a con man teaching dance under the disguise of yoga. But then when I think about it, it's yes, I'm bringing a lot of influences from dance into what I share as what I see as my yoga practice and my yoga offering as a teacher. But the biggest element of difference is that it's operated from that place of desire than a place of performance. And when you do that, people lose that layer of inhibition of needing to prove something to someone else and really going deep within themselves. So then it becomes a sustainable practice, and that then benchmarks are gone. There's no more like what is a good dancer, what is a bad dancer, a good or bad mover. And it's more, however curious you are, and you just go there, And so it's probably sort of, thinking about it as that hypnotherapy session thing that you were saying. He was brought into his deep subconscious, and then through that, this magical thing of the hypnotherapist sort of I guess, recalibrating his brain to
Yeah.
give himself that permission
Exactly.
to free up again, because the fact that he then went on to a trance, on a physical level, he is definitely capable for it. So where is that wall? It's all in the mind. And so it's again, us not permitting ourselves to behave like that, these little like barriers.
Because when I was, and the wall is exactly I know what my wall is, because
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, I remember people say, and I'm not bigging myself up here, but they're like, people go, you're a good dancer, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm a pretty good dancer, but I was be drunk, as with everyone else, and then I used to do a little bit of break dance as well. Like whenever I go to a wedding, people say like, do your break dancing, Kev. And like I do my little party tricks, and but then the wall is the alcohol basically, because I don't drink alcohol anymore, and so it is, there's a part of my brain that's kind of not being used, maybe my creativity, and so yeah, I think I might explore that. But I remember when I first started doing yoga. It's funny how you forget certain things, don't you? It's almost like
Always.
you shut off parts of your life
Yeah.
that either don't serve you, or that have hurt you, or that you're embarrassed about, or whatever. But I remember when I first started doing yoga, I used to walk into the hot yoga class, and I would stand on my mat when everyone was cross-legged, sitting down and lying down. I just stand there, like, stretching out my quads and just being like as if I'm about to play a game of football. and if I seen someone do that now, I would look probably look quite aggressive, maybe, because I'm there like as if I'm about to do a boot camp or something. I was like that for a good few months, and I felt so awkward doing. What were the things that made me feel very awkward? What kind of poses? Anything with like my legs open, I felt very awkward. I mean, downward dog, I felt so awkward doing that. But isn't it funny? The more you just do it, you just, oh, this is just normal now. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's what dance classes give me as well.
Absolutely, because like there's so much research going on about the plasticity of the brain, and this is precisely that, where we are built to adapt, and we need to trust that as much as we can, and give it the time, and not deny ourselves of the possibilities yet. And this could be, if I were to put it in a very layman term, a very big question amongst yoga teachers that I interact with in London, and they have this conflict of interest in their own mind, where they're sharing their workshops, and they're like, oh, I feel bad to promote my workshop, because what am I? I'm sharing yoga, and I'm not a marketeer or something. And then I flipped it on their head, and I just went, okay, but if you are not promoting it, you are also not allowing your students to find out about it, and that's sort of you creating your own wall.
Yeah.
Because you have controlled their decision. But if you put it out there, they decide if they want to come or not. But if you just don't say anything, you have said no on their behalf. And it's that, if you're on your mat and say if you want to try a handstand or really any posture or whatever, and if you just not even like give your mind a possibility of like, let me just give this a go, there's really no way you would expect to get up,
Yeah.
So however awkward a downward facing dog might be for you in the beginning, like you said, now it's becoming more comfortable. Exactly the same with taking risks and going to places where you think your ego might be compromised, or this fear of like, oh, I'm gonna feel shame, or all of that. You get used to it, and then it doesn't affect you as much.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
what I said about the inversions workshop today, when I first tried to look into my fear of going upside down, I thought by the end, when I have become comfortable upside down, I would not have that fear anymore. But now that I'm comfortable upside down, I still have the fear on a daily basis, but I have found a way to deal with it, so that it's just a passing thing than something that cripples me and stops me from progression. Yeah.
Talking about brain plasticity, and and play. You mentioned something about a study and in the workshop, and about repetitions and how
Yes.
play. So can you expand on that, like how important play is for us as adults?
Yeah, so don't quote me on this, but I
That's so
believe
good.
it's I think it's Dr. Karen Purvis, and she says that again, we're gonna have to look up that quote, but it's something like it takes 300 to 400 repetitions of a movement or something to create a new synapse in the brain, which means to create a new pathway, a pattern in the brain. Unless if you do it through play, you only need about 15 to 20 repetitions. That's where it's fascinating. Because again, if you think about back in school, when you study a subject that you are interested in, it reflects on your grades. You just, really ace it out. Whereas the things that you're just not kind of keen about, your grade again would probably be not as impressive as the one that you're interested in. And it shows if you are going to go into that place of curiosity, you're naturally responsive. Because again, you're anticipating it. You're like, I want to learn more. There's a hunger. Then, this is bore. This is labor. Which is, again, if you think about it, children, their children's work is play. And this is why they're always so enthusiastic and playful. But adults' work has now become work. Maybe that's where they've lost it. So if adults do view their work as play, can we then maybe find a little bit of that inner child back? Because again, the brain is plastic. You have been there before. Can we slowly guide ourselves back there? Yeah.
Alan Watts has a brilliant quote. He says, "Figure out a way to you can get paid to play."
Basically.
and Alan Watts, he's a master of words and poetry, but he talked about how he can't do accounts, for example. Some things that your mind is not geared towards, and the things that you enjoy, you will excel at. I lived in Korea for 2 years, and in Korea, they have a fantastic education in terms of their results. English and mathematics are some of the highest in the world, if not the highest. But their kids spend an insane amount of time at school. I mean, actually, they have these things called, what are they called? They're these night schools where kids will stay up studying till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And they would actually have people patrolling the streets, special security guards, to find these, I wish I could remember the actual Korean word for it, but to find these little schools. If they see a light on the second floor of a building, they'll go up and shut it down. Like, stop studying. It's gone 12 o'clock. Yeah. In England or in Western culture, it's like you're trying to encourage kids to study. Whereas in Korea, they're trying to say enough. This is not good for your health.
Yeah.
But so that's how much they study. But I think it's the Finnish in Finland. Their primary system has an education system where they teach kids through, for example, if they're teaching, what's the study of shapes? Geometry? No, that's. Anyway,
No, that's within math, no?
Yeah, if you're studying shapes, is it geometry?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, what's when you study earth and stone? Anyway, but if
It's geography.
no, but yeah, so if they're studying shapes, for example, we'll just go with that. They'll actually take the kids to the forest and say, "This acorn, what shape is it? This leaf, what shape is it?" And they spend way less time in school, but yet they're right neck and neck with Korea in terms of results.
Yeah.
I think they do 4 hours a day in school, the Finnish.
Yeah.
And like the same with the Swedish have now, I believe, they're working towards a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. So it's like you said, if they are engaged, it's done in a playful way, the information will stick.
Exactly.
Then if you're looking at the same sheet over and over again and it's not interactive, that's an interesting one about as well, it's the school systems, and how.
Yeah.
What's it like? I mean, obviously you went to school in Malaysia. What's the school system like in Malaysia? You studied. I mean, you did well in your schooling, so.
Yeah, I mean, I was a conventional diligent student, if you were to put it in that way, as in, like, in terms of academics, I like reading. I'm just, an unapologetic nerd. Love it. So it wasn't, grades weren't my weak point. They come naturally. I have an aptitude for them, but I'm not street smart. So that's the big, I could tell you all the facts whatsoever that's on the book, but you put me out of the context of a classroom, I'm like, I couldn't connect the dots at that point. So that's what education in the UK gifted me, especially in architecture, because you just got to think out of the box. And maybe that's why I was craving for a creative degree, because back in Malaysia, what is treasured is that conventional academic brain. We have that idealistic trajectory of, I want my kid to be a doctor, and that sort of route. And I guess because I've just been put in that position all the time, it simply made my craving for creativity even stronger. But it almost came back to me in a full roundabout way, where because of what I have studied in the UK, which are in both fields, creative, dance and architecture, I've allowed myself to really contextualize what I've learned from an intellectual perspective down to a practical sense of how you apply it, Like, if I were to be that kid, in the jungle with the Finnish guys, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what an acorn's shape is, if I were to really exaggerate it. And so what it boils down to is efficiency, Like, you will see that these two guys, these Korean guys and the Finnish guys, different means, but similar grades. Who got there more efficiently? The Finnish guys, because they don't study till nighttime. So that, like, how so closely linked creativity is to efficiency.
When you talked about how, like, you weren't street smart necessarily growing up, when you went to the UK, what did you learn? Was it a bit of a culture shock in that respect?
Oh my gosh, for sure. Yeah, and so many. Well, culture shock is one thing, and then coming out of my bubble of pamperedness is a whole other thing, because I haven't even broken an egg. Like, it was like, didn't know how to cook. I do not know how to orientate myself. I think that was the biggest struggle for me. And especially because I'm in a freaking architecture degree. And I was like, what? You can't orientate yourself? You can't even really read maps? Really took a hit to my ego, But so I think it took me a good half a year to get rid of that rigidity. In terms of orienteering, because I stuck so hard to this book smart me that I would just go that same route from my home, like from my accommodation to my faculty building, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and until half a year, where these guys, my peers, have now, probably even like people a year below me, spending like 2 months just, and they have found all the different routes there. And they're like, why are you taking such a long route there? And I'm like, oh, I'm so stuck in my way. So that was the hardest thing for me to let go. Although for cooking, I sort of took it in somehow a very different attitude. I just went, okay, like, whatever I fancy eating, I'll figure it out. Just went, no recipes needed, just sort of did my own mishmash of what, like, I can't cook any Malaysian food at that point. It was just like whatever I see in my fridge.
You're gonna cook.
Yeah, and it always turned out fine. And even my mom, when I went back, I was like, wow, like, I'm impressed with what you came up with. The fact that you couldn't even break an egg, I just sort of was curious in a way that I wasn't curious when I was orienteering myself. Then again, it's because it's a little bit more controlled, where, I mean, I guess in the worst case, when you, like, cook a disaster, you throw it away. But then maybe there's something in me about, like, getting lost in the city and, like, how do I go back? And, it's this whole, like, other level of fear, maybe.
Do you see yourself staying in London for the long while?
I love London, but I don't think so. I I think again, just being in Malaysia and this whole idea of integration and variety and changes all the time does give me this big question about home. And with what the context of how I've come here as well. And now that I've been in the UK for 10 years almost, I'm really questioning like where is home for me, Family is one thing, but like where really is home? And at this point, truthfully, London feels more like home than Malaysia. But there's still something amiss. And I think that's mainly because I love my greens. I love peace and quiet. And London is just a little bit too hustly bustly for me. I like the drive sometimes that I get from it, but I see myself living somewhere a little bit more remote and maybe have the option to come and visit. Then, you still get the same drive, but you're just a little bit calmer in your nervous system because I fully believe in ripples of energy. And this is why, just having been here this past week in Ireland in general, I've been in Sligo and in Dublin, people are just quite chilled here. And however strung up I am, or however strong I feel at the particular moment, I just could not help but feel relaxed. And I was just saying to you that my laptop is quite literally fried, and if I were to have faced that in London, I probably would have been in a meltdown. But because it happened here, I'm just sort of like, okay, it's fine. And I've been off my laptop for 3-4 days. That's pretty much unheard of. Yeah. So yeah, I really feel it's such a big factor in the way your headspace is wired where you live.
Completely. I mean, I'm from London, and as you noticed today in Yoga Hub, you bump into people all the time. I mean, I when the people I was chatting to today, for example, in Yoga Hub, I don't know them from Yoga Hub. I know them from different walks. Like they live near me. The thing about Dublin is you can walk around and actually bump into people and for your mind. I mean, supposedly for your mental health, you can only know like 100 people. After that, it's impossible to know that many people intimately as a community. And there's something to be said for bumping into people you recognise, how you've been, having that conversation. That my sister said this brilliantly once. She said, in London, you're never alone, but you can feel very alone. And I think that's. And I'm not dissing. I like London. London is fun, but and this goes to any city. I mean, you can't have millions of people in one place and expect to have a community. It's just not. And it's like it has its good points, as you said. It drives you. There's loads of opportunity, but to recognise. I think you said yesterday that once a month you like to get out and go and. So move to Dublin, David. Let's stop all this faffing around. I would quite
seriously consider that.
There you go.
But I think that is one of the reasons why I'm quite grateful to London because I feel it has gifted me my voice as a yoga teacher. Because I got into yoga as a thing that I do with my mum. And, again, being a very self-processed mama's boy, when I found out that I was going to go to the UK to further my study, I just couldn't help but think about, oh gosh, I'm really going to miss you, Mom. Like, let's do something together. There was just this massive yoga billboard outside our home, and I thought, okay, yeah, let's try that, Went there, and then that's become our thing, When I left to the UK, when we Skype every week, we'll be like, oh, have you still been practicing, how are you, and all that, and it's always been the anchor of what keeps our connection so special. And that's what I really want to bring in my classes. When I saw in London, what you said about this feeling of loneliness, although it's so packed with people, it's almost ironic. How can I provide a space for people to feel like they are seen and to feel like they can connect? I like to think about my classes as a social space as well, because otherwise, why come? Just if you're so into the introspective part of yoga, you practice at home. But there's a reason why people are like, I want to go to class. And so for me, I've done my job if I have allowed everyone to feel seen, not necessarily by me, but by their peers, by the fellow yogis in class. I quite like to start or end my class by inviting everyone to extend their gaze to one another so that they can really appreciate the community, because that way you soften the space as well. Because if you think about it, I'm seeing more and more within cities, wherever I travel to, when I do step into a class as a yogi, like as a student and not a teacher, it just looks like another version of the London Tube, where their mat is their personal space. And when someone else steps on your mat, it's almost like why are you here? And why, And, when we talk about yoga as connection and integration, it's not just connecting within to yourself, but then bringing that out towards others. That's, I feel, the only way you can then enhance the quality of your life. Because what's the point of having such a such wisdom in your own mind and openness in your body when you can't share that with anyone?
Yes. It's true. There's oh god, I listened to this fascinating podcast the other day talking about how we, if someone wants to like learn how to breastfeed their child, they won't consult the next door neighbor who's a grandmother who's had how many kids and how many grandkids. They'll hire a lactation consultant instead. And it's more so that we fear connection. What it was, which is a brilliant point the guy made, I wish I could remember his name. He said, we don't fear connection, we fear needing someone. So that we don't want to feel like someone is depending upon us. And then ironically we'll watch TV or the YouTube, whatever, and watch an imitation of relationships, like Friends. I watch it. You watch a TV show called Friends because you wish you lived in a house with 6 other people all around your age, different sexes, and you wish you had that, but yet you don't want the hassle of living with housemates, because it's like we and I thought that was so interesting that when that high eye contact thing which we did yesterday, I found that very difficult because I remember my 300 hour we did that as well, and I mentioned this before actually on my podcast, but I was the girl I was looking at, she had piercing blue eyes like my dad, and I remember thinking, I have never looked at my dad like this, and I started crying, and I don't really cry because I'm a nerd, just like I'm just conditioned not to cry, as it were. And eye contact is such a powerful thing because it can mean 2 things really: intimacy or aggression. Like when I used to compete in jiu-jitsu, you go pair up, the referee would put you with another guy and you look at each other and you have that look, and it's it can be quite intense, it really can. Equally if you love somebody, you'll look in their eyes like like you love them.
They're really such windows to depth, and I think that's why we get scared, because it's almost like, oh, you can see all of my dirty laundry, from just like seeing, and maybe because of the reflective quality of our eyes as well, because if you look deeply you can see yourself. Oh god, I'm going so metaphorical here. But there's something about the eyes that speaks so much, and like even now looking at you, with this setup of a podcast, I don't know what you're doing with your lips or with your nose or whatever, but just through the eyes, I could sort of gauge, like how you are and all that, and that's powerful. That's so powerful.
It really is. And unfortunately, David, I've got to take you to the airport now. So yeah, we've got to wrap it up. But if people want to find out more about you, where would they go?
I think that the most convenient one would be on Instagram. You can find me at David Kam KW. So that's David KAM for mother, because I'm a mama's boy, and KW. Alternatively, if you'd like to read up more about me, you can go onto my website, which you can also find through my Instagram on the link. And I'll just say that so it's a lot easier. Instagram is where I usually share my daily thoughts. So little things like we've been doing here, but in little spurts, like a little diary entry.
Yeah.
So
What does KW stand for?
my full name and initials, really. And it's down to logistics because so my full name is David Kam Kiawe, so it would have been KW. And it's because someone has David Kam on Instagram.
Give it up, David Kam.
And I don't want to go for David Kam yoga in a sense because I wanted to fully reflect like my life.
Yeah, that's fair.
Then like this being the yoga me because yoga is my life as a whole.
Yeah.
So this is just me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, David Kam KW, thank you.
Exactly.
Done.
Amazing.
Yeah, man. Boom, another one in the bag. What an absolute pleasure that man is. Joy, gentleman, and a scholar. So, to love you and leave you, Small Changes, my new sponsor. Organic, eco-friendly, plant-based, whole foods, refills, juice bar, zero waste ethos, Drumcondra D9 Dublin. Check them out, smallchanges.ie. No promo code, no coupon to give you. Just go down there, bring a refillable cup, get 50% off a fresh juice or a smoothie. Have a little browse around. I recommend you follow them online, Instagram, Twitter. And you'll see that they have some exciting stuff coming up this summer, which I'm particularly excited about because it affects my local area. And I don't know how much I can say, but I'm having Podder, who's the owner, on actually next couple of weeks as my guest. And his story in itself is very interesting, and he does really great things for the community. I really believe in making a change, and small changes make a big difference. And the other change you can make is what you're wearing. What are you putting on your body? I don't mean how good do you look. I mean, where does the material come from? How is it made? How can you do your bit? Because hopefully, I assume you want to wear clothes for the rest of your life. And, when you're a kid, you can get away with going around naked. But it gets to a stage where you got to cover up, And if you're going to cover up, look good while doing it, especially with a fella. To do that, go to om.com/#TYLP. That's ohmme.com/#TYLP. What is Om, you're asking? Did you not hear the start of the podcast when I told you already? But let me tell you again, in case you forgot. or you did maybe skip that bit. Well, I'll get you now anyway. So, om.com create high-quality men's apparel with movement in mind. I wear their gear all the time. All their stuff is made from recycled paper, packaging, and recycled fabrics. They are at the forefront of sustainability when it comes to manufacturing clothing, and I'm really proud to have them as a sponsor. So if you would like to get yourself some clobber, you go to om.com/#TYLP, put in the promo code Kevin at checkout, and you get 15% off all your gear. So that's Kevin at checkout for 15% off. We're done. Thank you so much for listening. If you listened all the way to the end, God bless you. I really appreciate it. I absolutely love doing this. I'm so proud to have the sponsors I have, to get all the lovely messages that people are sending me. And I absolutely love doing this. So keep sending me messages. It really encourages me to know that this is helping you. And any questions, comments, concerns, let me know. If you like, share on your Instagram stories. That makes the biggest difference, I find, for spreading the word out there. Any requests for guests, let me know. I'm all ears. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can go to kevinboyleyoga.ie /support the Yoga Life podcast, and feel free to make a donation. That would be much appreciated as well. Look after yourself. That's enough from me. Have a powerful week. Ta-ta.